Good morning. This is Morning Voice Keith Keller. I am a registered nurse working in the field of recovery. I am in long-term recovery myself, over 30 years, and I am delighted to be here this morning with Michael. Hello to Michael's audience. Very nice to connect with you.
Let's go. I'm on a journey to discover the truth. Living life in recovery is lovely. You got the power in you. Surround yourself with positive energy. Judges hitting people with provocative penalties. Need to make a change. Advocate to change the laws. Prove to people that it's not insane. When you stand behind a cause, I'm here to speak about the pain. Recover loud to normalize the disease that's been killing all my friends and my family. The time is now to let it all go and recover loud. The benefit is healthy people, family and friends that never have to overdose ever again, never have to plead out to a lesser offense. I'm proud to say that I recover loud. I never thought I could, but I'm so proud that I discovered how to live my life again, controlling my own destiny. I needed recovery, I still need it desperately. Addiction never defined my identity. I recover loud, here to tell my own story. I recover proud, save a life of like 40. I recover loud, yeah, I recover loud. I recover loud, yeah, I recover loud.
Welcome to this episode of Recover Loud. I'm your host, Mike Paddleford, and I recover loud. My guest today is Keith Keller, author of the Infinite Recovery Handbook. Keith, welcome. It's been great to meet you at this conference this week. And yesterday you were a presenter. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing when you're going out and speaking to the public? What kind of message are you bringing?
When I connect with an audience, I want to tailor my conversation, and it's best to have a conversation rather than just talk at people, certainly. I take into consideration what the audience might be, what their expectations might be. I find myself speaking at the occasional AA meeting, so I want to give an AA appropriate talk.
Right.
Sometimes I talk to a civic group and want to stay relevant to the concerns of people who are affected indirectly by addiction and recovery. So, try and focus on the needs of a particular audience.
And I mean, one thing we learn is we never know what it is we can say that's going to connect with somebody.
Very true.
We can prepare, we can plan, but sometimes it's what we don't think about.
It's always a
that
surprise.
Really makes that connection. Yeah. On Recover Loud, we like to share, our personal stories of the struggles and how we got to our recovery and what that looks like today. You've written the book, The Infinite Recovery Handbook, and I got to read, quite a bit of it last night, and honestly, as I was mentioning, I had to skip through, so I got a better idea of the whole book, but it grabbed me, and I can't wait to get back to some of the sections.
Thank you for that. It's kind of challenging to write a book for, I want to reach a broad audience, so
Correct.
Certainly people in recovery, and so I don't want to make it too highfalutin,
Right.
But there's a lot of information that people benefit from, so that's the challenge. And I also know that people like the academics here at the conference are also going to be looking at it. So it keeps me on my toes, certainly. I would go out and identify myself as, depending where I am, I'm in long-term recovery from alcohol use disorder and polysubstance use disorder. If I'm at a 12-step meeting, hi, I'm Keith, I'm an alcoholic. Just
Yes.
Real simple, old school, but the language now, there's kind of a couple of different approaches people want to take, and the people that are not directly affected are very concerned about how they and we do know that words are very powerful. So, we want to just sort of keep everybody comfortable
Exactly.
when we can. I'm old school. I got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, 12-step. I call that the traditional model because
Exactly.
it's been there, and they observe traditions, which are important, maybe something we'll touch on further down in the conversation. So I was just oddly fascinated with alcohol and the consumption of alcohol, and there was definitely something unusual and abnormal about my drinking from a very early age.
Yeah.
Dad, give me some beer.
Right, and at what age did you start first asking for that sip of beer?
Oh, 5,
Yeah.
4, 5, like
Yeah.
just-
And was it normal in your household for them to be drinking alcohol and for them to allow you?
Well, as I got a little older, so my father was born in Europe, and so my parents divorced, and on it'd be Sunday evening dinner at my dad's. There'd be a glass of wine, and pretty soon, can I have another one? And that's kind of how it went, and that was the sort of part of the iceberg that showed, because pretty quickly I started, I guess at around age 13. I caught the perfect buzz, and I spent about the next 2 decades trying to recreate that. And of course, it never quite works out the same.
Yeah.
So I grew up, got interested in music, and my alcohol and recreational drug consumption and use certainly became part of that all enmeshed in
And
that.
what was that doing for you? I mean, because people can go out and play music and do these things without using, but what was it you were gaining from?
Oh, I guess it was the search for the ultimate note. I got interested in drums. I'll blame that on Ringo, going back to a long time ago. But it just looked like a lot of fun. So I took some lessons and got kind of good at an early age. And on at the tender age of 15, on a school night, I might be out playing in bars,
Wow.
getting paid in drinks. And I thought, oh, this is wonderful.
And where was
this
it
is
you were
what I
growing
want
up?
to do. Down on the area of Massachusetts north of Boston.
Okay.
There was quite a happening music scene between there, and down to Boston. Some of the more famous bands, like the band Boston and others, came out of that whole fertile musical area. So I was sort of down in the trenches,
Right.
In that, but certainly aspiring to do
Yeah.
that.
You don't see those opportunities pop up for a lot of people. So you must have been doing well at playing the drums. The band must have been getting some.
Well, yeah, I mean, but throughout high school,
Yeah.
I found myself in bands because I was, I guess, somewhat competent. I'll go with that. So with older musicians, of course, who could buy alcohol, had other things to sample, and so I was in fast company from an early age.
Yeah.
I somehow got into the Berklee College of Music, which is kind
Wow.
of that was an amazing opportunity that I squandered, along with many others.
So
in music.
you started to attend. How long did you stay there?
Stayed there a year, and then ran out of money. Wasn't getting a lot of support for my aspirations in music, and I went on the road with a guy I've since made amends to.
Okay.
He's actually kind of popular again. His music is on the Amazon commercial with the elderly couple dancing. I
Wow.
Only Have Eyes for You. Yeah, Terry Johnson had a traveling band, so I got to
Yeah.
go out and sample that. And that was another opportunity that I drank myself out of. I doubt if he'll see this, but Terry, I meant the amends if you see this.
Well, I hope he does. This show is growing and reaching more and more across the country.
Yeah, you're doing something wonderful here.
Yeah.
I'm really
Thank you.
appreciative of the opportunity.
Just real quick, welcome those of you just outside St. Louis, Missouri, who are now watching the show.
Oh, cool.
It's stories like yours and people's and other people who really give the show the value. So I appreciate you coming. A little known fact: Berklee School of Music was one of my aspirations. I was a trumpet player in high school.
Very nice.
Did pretty well. And we had done a jazz band competition. I believe it was my sophomore year in high school. And when I got there and I saw the musicians and the things that they were doing, I was just amazed. And I said, this is my path. And I never made it.
No, it's a big competitive world, and
Yeah.
I was sort of in my high school and community. I was kind of the big fish, and then you get to Berklee and you're mediocre, if not below that. It is a world-class stage, and I'm glad they're training the best musicians, because
Yeah.
now I just enjoy music. I stopped playing the drums about 10, 12 years ago.
So you don't play at all?
They're all packed up downstairs. I can't say never, but I think writing kind of supplanted that, became my creative outlet.
So you started writing your book in what year?
This is my second book.
Yes.
And so I started this one in 2017. I was actually pitching to a publisher. I wanted to do sort of a rewrite on my first one, which came out in 2014.
And what was the name of the first book?
First one was called Sustainable Recovery.
Okay.
So I've kind of been
Yeah.
rebranding and retooling a little bit, but also very much moving forward and progressing in my ideas about recovery as well.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about that before we started, how, it's a journey, okay? My definition of recovery is the journey through the process of change that's going to create a better tomorrow.
Very nice.
It has nothing to do, my definition has nothing to do with substances. If quitting a substance is the goal of your journey, great, but that doesn't have to be the end result of recovery. And when we get there, it's not over. We're constantly evolving, personally, spiritually, professionally even, taking us in directions we never imagined we'd go. So when you started writing the books, what was your goal? What was the message you were trying to put out there?
Wow. Okay. So with the first one, I was following a very basic self-help book formula, which is sort of my story, then my ideas about recovery, and then part 3 would be how my ideas can benefit other people. So I was one who, now 30 years ago when I entered recovery, the traditional model, AA and the 12 steps, were pretty much the only show in town.
Yeah.
And I jumped in with, both feet, as they say, did the work. That's something I would suggest to anybody, do the work. But, as a registered nurse, you ask any registered nurse about that and they'll say, well, we want to work smart. It's not that we're afraid of hard work, but let's work smart. Let's do this right. Let's do this, the most efficient, organized way. And this was, sort of my ideas about recovery. And also, very early on, having worked in numerous areas of nursing, but especially in substance use disorder rehab and detoxing, saw that there was a real need for more ideas and to encompass all forms of addiction, all pathways to recovery, before that became what everybody wants, more or less. I think in the last 5 years that's come a long way, but I was 10 years ago kind of, very much moving in this direction. So I have done some other things aside from nursing. I've studied alternative and energy healing modalities, and then 10 years ago got into a kind of a very structured personal development, science-based. Meditation is very central to this, and it is sort of a way to imagine the possibilities and create what do I want to do in recovery? Well, I want to step into my best potential. I want to, and I literally went from a guy who had always thought maybe someday I'll write a book to a guy who writes books, which, it's kind of a leap, and you just have to kind of create in your mind the feeling of how that's going to be,
right.
And the details, the what's going to happen, the when's it going to come along, who's going to facilitate or help me with that, or what's, that stuff happens. You set the goal and you start moving toward it.
And a lot of times we stop when we have all those questions because we don't have those answers.
Afraid to move forward.
Yeah.
So, all right. So very simply, I think that we are in one of two states, which is the kind of we're at basic survival level, or we are in kind of a creation state. Obviously, if I'm struggling with an addiction, I'm pretty close to survival level. I'm really just trying to make it through the day, feed my addiction, and maybe I'm, my particular version of that was I was stuck in a repeating cycle of struggle through the day, attain or obtain, whatever, use my substance of choice, modify my state to the point of oblivion, check out, and repeat over and over. And is that life, and does that keep working? No, obviously, and there's a lot of details in how, I develop tolerance, become dependent on, that substance, and it stops working long before we realize it does. So I am at this very baseline place where I'm just struggling to survive. Now, creation, of course, is as we sort of enter recovery, get our feet underneath us, and start to learn how to, all the things maybe that we didn't learn earlier in life, repairing the damage, the baggage, clearing up the wreckage, and we start to move forward and think about what is possible, what do I want to do, what does it mean to be in recovery, to overcome this thing of addiction. So learning, building things in your life, doing podcasts and TV shows, writing books. These are all the possibilities that all of us are capable of.
And see, back when I was using, I used to call myself a functioning addict. I was trying to raise my 3 kids. I did, in the beginning, still have dreams and goals. I didn't know how to attain them, but I was trying. I would get a job and lose it in a month. I would start doing well and it would blow up. So nothing was sustainable then. I had the drive, I had the ambition. One of the reasons I started, my addiction got really bad was in the beginning, I was getting this medication and I was selling it. And my first addiction was money and power. I was able to provide my kids with the stuff that they wanted and the stuff that I didn't have growing up. We had family members that lived, just outside of Boston, Peabody, Lynn, and I grew up in Webster, Mass. And my aunts and uncles lived at the lake. We lived in an apartment building, and I always wanted to be like the other side. So now once I got to be an adult, and my kids at first, scraping by, I became a store manager and I was doing well, and then I got hurt. So the idea of being on disability the rest of my life, having a fixed income, losing out on all of those opportunities, that I wanted to give my kids, I found that I could still do that if I was breaking the law, selling my medication.
Well, we do what we have to do, and this is the survival level motivation.
Yeah, and it really drove me, and I thought I was doing well by them. Later on, of course, once I started doing a little bit, it got more and more. I could sell less. I wasn't making the money. I started spending money. I had to find ways to get it. Started selling everything I owned. Lost it all. And
less sustainable, obviously.
And then today, when I asked the kids about that whale watching trip that we took, we got all the great pictures. They know that I sold drugs to do that. That the time we went to the theme park, they know that every time I went to the bathroom, I was in there getting high. So all those memories, even though I was doing it for the right reasons, I thought, it turned out to be, traumatizing and detrimental to their growth now, because everything they saw as good is tainted. So today, being present and being able to do these things with my kids, all my kids are adults now, but I'm able to be there for them. My son, he's a Marine in North Carolina. He's married, doing well. He just went back to Japan for another 5 months. But he calls me, and calls me dad, and he tells me what he's going through, and I get to be there for him.
Well, your insight into that is certainly validating of the work you've done in recovery, and that is a higher level of recovery, to come to understand that even though superficially that those experiences seemed okay. Now
Right.
you know the true substance of what was going on,
Exactly.
the impact it had on others, and obviously you've gotten right with that. That's as good as it gets.
Yeah,
Michael.
and those are those gifts of recovery that we're all working towards. And for people who haven't gotten that yet, people who are still fighting DHHS for custody of their children, things like that, sometimes that pile seems insurmountable. But I promise them all the time, if you keep doing the work on yourself, it doesn't matter. That pile's going to get smaller without you even picking things
Well,
up.
it is a process, and we get
Yeah.
so stuck in that survival mode where we're thinking about the things, and we're just really focused on what's going on in the environment, what issues, when can I resolve them, that kind of thing. And if we can just kind of move a little bit out of that and start, functioning from the level of observing our reality the way somebody else would, then we can start to make our best decisions, call in the resources, and open ourselves up to the possibility that it's going to work out. Because it always does, but it's fear, it's concern about the things that we're lacking, worrying about the judgment of others. We get locked down in these things and just
And
collapse
it's all
into
based on our past experience. We know that the person we were could try this and it would end in failure. We don't know the person we are today has the potential to do it better.
Well, but we always did, and
Right.
that's the thing, and it's how can we connect to that possibility. So there's a couple of things that I suggest to people, and I've learned a lot of lessons from my work in the traditional model of recovery, and I realized that while I might not need to go to a meeting every day, I do need a community of like-minded people with the same goals and objectives who will support me unconditionally. And there are many forms of community. Being at a conference is a form of community. Our online, our social media type stuff, that's also a form of community. Mentoring or sponsorship, certainly. I've had the same friend for over 30 years.
Wow.
I've known him for that long. He's been my official.
Did you know him prior to?
No. Met him in early recovery.
So, if you don't mind talking about that for a minute, right now I am the live-in house manager for a program where I have 3 guys living there, early recovery. They're all trying to get through and turn their lives around. And as of right now, all 3 of them are just about at the 30-day mark. One of them's at 45 days sober. And one of the things they're looking to do is to find a mentor, either a sponsor or a recovery coach. And at that stage of their growth, they don't really know who to ask, how to go about finding somebody.
That's a challenge.
Can you suggest something that they could do to choose the right sponsor? Because
Well,
obviously,
bear in mind that the right person is not going to come knock on their door. They're going to have to go out and sample what's out there. So obviously meetings are a good place to do that, or other types of organizations where they can observe people. Online, it's not, it's a little bit different. It's not quite as real. When you get a sense of how somebody speaks, carries themselves, and the content of what they talk about, their values, their experiences, that's, and it's, the first sponsor that I had was not the sponsor that I was going to move forward in life with, but he was, fine for the first couple of years. So there are people who are dedicated to this work, certainly a lot more than I am, and very good at it. But perhaps not exactly the guy who's like, I'll be everybody's temporary sponsor. Maybe not so much. But I would suggest to people that they kind of get out and see who's out there who.
and when you hear people speak, like you said, finding like-minded people doing the same thing with the same kind of goals. I was lucky enough. My very first sponsor was business-minded. Very much like-minded. He works in recovery. He's trying to help people, and I knew from the moment I first heard him that this is the guy I want to help guide.
Well, that's that we have a little brain in the middle of our stomach that knows these things, and if we can listen to it, then yeah, we can make good decisions usually. Accountability. And a willingness to make yourself accountable to someone and follow guidance, which isn't always comfortable.
Right.
Honesty is certainly important in that relationship, and that's what it is. It's a relationship. Then learning about recovery, learning about addiction. The traditional model knows a lot. There's a lot of wisdom in the big book, the other literature of AA, and then there's unlimited stuff available to us now through the internet and many fine independent authors. And finding the things that resonate with you. We certainly benefit from having a belief system, whether that's a belief in a power greater than myself, religious God, or creative intelligence of the universe, which is kind of my go-to. There is something going on. There is like literally, gallons of blood pumping through miles of blood vessels in my body. My heart will beat 3 trillion times in my life. Thousands of chemical reactions go on every second in my body. I'm not doing that. Something is. And it's sometimes it's hard for people to warm up to the concept of that, but there are many different versions of that. People just have to kind of find their own place with that. Service, that's the other piece. You're doing it right now. We're here at a conference
and
to
30
talk
30
about
years
that.
in, you're still doing it yourself. We talked a little bit about what you, when you're presenting and speaking to the public. What are some of the other things you're doing today to connect with people? You have an online presence as well.
I do. I pay the bills as a registered nurse working in the field of addiction. In the last couple of years, I have worked in a medical office where I'm no longer there. There is a great program where they do medications for addiction treatment. And that is a whole piece of what's going on out there right now. There's a lot of dedication in the healthcare system. There's still a lot of glitches, a lot of stigma, just the way there is in the wider culture. But there are a lot of people very dedicated to helping people with substance use disorders, and I'm very appreciative of people like we're seeing here at the conference. Who just spend their time looking at brain scans or compiling statistics, and somebody has to do this. I'm glad that there are people who are dedicated to that. So working in the mental health field, also in the last year, community mental health, and shortly I'll be going to work in an inpatient detox. So helping people directly. Is
that here in New Hampshire?
That is just over the line down in Massachusetts, where I reside. It's actually right in my own community, so I'm kind of excited about that opportunity. I'm usually active when the opportunity presents in various local organizations. I expect to be speaking right at the town library sometime in the next month or two. I am, as you said, the online presence. I have a free online support community, and I don't know if you're going to link things up, but that's you can find that through my website, infiniterecovery.org. So on Facebook, we have 1,000 people with all different forms of addiction, many pathways to recovery, from about 12 countries, and this is a little unique for Facebook and didn't happen randomly. Okay, they're very respectful, supportive of one another, engage very, very nicely. I think you popped in a couple of times, and thank you for your posts and contributions to that. I have some real rock stars who are like the content machines. It's become easy, but there's hundreds of people active every month. I look at the statistics, so I know that we are helping and supporting.
Where can people find your book?
It's available on Amazon and select bookstores, at least here in the Northeast. I did have one royalty last month from Australia. So it's available through the various Amazons in the different parts of the world. I do sell books in Canada, Europe, and a few in Australia.
So the process, and you touched briefly earlier about all the questions going in, the who, the what, the where, the why, and the how.
I made all the mistakes on my first book,
Yeah.
so I kind of have a little bit more of a sense of this, and it's very exciting because my ideas are really there to much more an advertisement for recovery than any service I want to sell you, which is kind of what I see a lot of other people doing. No, I'm a real guy with a real story, and I'm in it to help people, and so the book really helps people to, first of all, come to terms with what's going on if they have an addiction. And if they're in crisis, I actually put a section in the back with directions to go look at the back of the book if you are thinking about hurting yourself, because this is a real, we can't recover if we're not around to recover. So that
Right.
it's important that nurses want to triage, prioritize things. Then, how to get help, how to establish recovery, how to integrate back into our lives, our livelihoods, our relationships. And these are all the things, the challenges that we all have in common pretty much. And I also bring a little perspective as, that nurse who was taking care of you in rehab and at the doctor's office. So I am very transparent about my recovery. When I go to work for somebody they know, and I kind of lead with this. And if they're not okay with that, well, let's get that up front.
Right.
And and some of my friends are going to be talking about this today at the conference. It's kind of important because somebody with long-term recovery, I am not helping the cause by hiding in a church basement.
Exactly.
So I'm very out there. However, I do believe that, especially in early recovery, when people are working through that survival stuff, you are entitled, a word I seldom use, to anonymity, whatever it takes
Absolutely.
to support yourself and believe in your recovery. That's really important.
Yeah,
So we need to.
And I mean, the stigma is real.
Oh, yeah.
And you've got a section in your book that I saw it in the front, and I had to screw stigma.
I mince words. Yeah.
And after reading some of it, I had that thought. How controversial is this guy? But really, you're
I push the envelope for
yeah.
sure.
But you present well. So
One tries.
and that's
But
really
this is me,
Yeah.
and you know what? I as somebody who struggled with substance use disorder, I was a little edgy. I was a little out of the box, and being true to that, and this is one of the authenticity is certainly going to serve us collectively.
Absolutely.
As we try to bring a higher standard to recovery. And this is always a talk I would have with patients, especially in the primary care setting. You're out there in the office next to the little old lady with diabetes. And we have a chronic condition. We are legitimately here seeking help for this.
Yeah.
Okay, we're no different than the person who's just here for routine physical, high blood pressure, perhaps has a sprained ankle, or yes, these are different chronic conditions, different acute conditions. However, we have our rightful place in healthcare. We deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and but a lot of that also comes from how we and many elements of the disease of addiction, substance use disorder or behavioral addiction certainly, are that we don't always present well. So this is something we need to spread understanding about, to help people understand that when somebody is feeling so uncomfortable, they're maybe wishing they weren't